Now that we have DBT installed locally on our machine, the next step we need to do is initialize our first project. Step number one, let's go to our GitHub page. So go back to your GitHub and select Create Repository. And so from here, what we'll do is we give it a name. I'll call this DBT Training. For simplicity purposes, right now, we'll create this public. But when you do create this on a team and within a company, you'll probably want it to be private so you can restrict it. But for training, yeah, you can keep it public. And the one thing we'll add is just a README, just so that we can have it create a main branch for us, and it'll be something that we can grab, and it kind of initializes it for us. So just select this, leave everything else empty for now, and select Create Repository. And here we can see it created it for us. So it's just a repo called DBT Training. We have one file that just says this. There's nothing else to it. And what we'll want to grab from here is, if you click this, we can see it gives us this link here. Copy this, and we're going to use that to bring it to our local machine. That's the beauty of Git and GitHub. So now back here within our GitHub directory, the command we will write is git clone and then paste in that URL. And what it's going to do is, because we have Git installed and we're connected to the internet and all this stuff, it can go to GitHub on this URL, grab it, and bring it locally. So here we have DBT Training. We just have this one file, and that's it. Now that we have this project here, what we want to do is initialize a DBT project within it. So we want to fill this with a skeleton of DBT so that we can get started. So what we'll do first is change into that directory. So let's do cd DBT Training. So that moves us now into here. And the command that we'll run, this will be our first DBT command, will be DBT init for initialize. And then we need to give the project a name. And in this case, we'll give it, we'll call it also DBT Training, but we need to do an underscore here. We can't do the dash because it won't allow you to build it that way. It's a restriction of DBT. So we'll do this underscore here, call it DBT Training, and press enter. So first thing we can see here is, one, it added a new directory within here. Now we're probably going to want to take this out of a subdirectory just to avoid the extra layer, but we'll deal with that later. And now what we want to do is configure our project. So get it all set up. It's going to walk us through how to do that. This is actually fairly new. Originally, they didn't have this. So it's saying, which database would you like to use? For us, we have one. That's the one adapter that we installed. So we'll just say Snowflake 1. You can add other ones if you wanted. Account number. So now what we need to do is reference our Snowflake environment here. So we need to open this back up. And what it's asking for is the account information. Everything before .snowflake computing, and I have this already highlighted here, but it will be your account ID and then the location and cloud provider that you're on. So I'll copy this here and paste it here. Dev username, the username up here that you've created. For me, it's hello KDS. There's a few different ways that you can connect to Snowflake, and therefore DBT allows you to connect each of these ways. One is a password. You can create a key pair or do SSO, single sign-on. For our case, we're just going to keep it simple and do passwords. So we'll push 1. Now you need to enter your password. Role. In our case, we created the DBT Training role for this purpose. And you can see here it says dev role because it's the development role that you would use, but we made DBT Training. What's the warehouse? DBT Training Warehouse, WH, is what we created. Database. Now the default database that we will build our projects in is going to be that analytics or analytics dev. Remember, we spoke about that earlier. Let me grab this. Here is where we will be building our DBT projects. This is where everything's going to deploy. So we'll use this. What we'll do by default here is dev. We won't put the production database. So we'll do analytics dev, and we'll add both of them later. Schema. Now, we said that these are the schemas we're going to use, but we don't want to necessarily set one of these as the default. We'll add these as custom schemas as we go on later. So we'll just use the normal default of public. Again, we'll touch on this more later, but just to get us through here. And then threads here are talking about how many different processes do you want to run in parallel. So you have the ability through Snowflake and through how dbt allows you to do this. But in our case, we're not going to have a lot of different models running. So I'm just going to keep it as one. We're not going to have any performance issues. And that's it. It says it's created a new project, dbt training, and we can see that here. And it also created a profile for us at this location. But just to show you what that looks like, if you go to your root directory, for me, I'm on a Mac, so I go to this home. And what you have to do if you're on a Mac, it's a hidden directory. So you have to press Shift Command dot. Again, Shift Command dot. And you'll see this .dbt directory was created here, this hidden directory. And if you open this up, you see it looks something like this. We'll talk a little bit more about this file coming up, but essentially this is all the stuff we just created through walking through that little exercise. And we also created our project over here. So we'll stop here for this lesson. And like I said, we're going to talk more about the profiles. We'll walk through more about the project, kind of how it's laid out in the next lesson, and we'll see you there.